Developments, and more developments, of course, on the front pages of all of the national dailies. Welcome back. This is the newspaper review segment of course, Daybreak. And as is customary, I have a copy of the Daily Trust with me. Going quickly into the details of the Daily Trust front page story. Lead story there says, protest how 4 teenagers bride-to-be were killed in Kano, Zaria. These stories are on the pages 3, 4, and 26. Other writers there says CSOs want security agents involved prosecuted. Also, FG places sponsors on watch list. Use of force against protesters, crime against humanity. But then again, we've seen some of what these protesters, or do I say unscrupulous elements who have posed to be protesters, have done to buildings, both government and private, across the country. So definitely, some would argue that they ought to be arrested and prosecuted for those actions. Also, we're investigating incidents, army, police. Other stories on the Daily Trust says, why Shell declined offer to run Nigerian refineries, says former President Olusegun Obasanjo. That story is on page 3. Other stories also, CBN approves Unity Providence Bank's merger, page 19. That story, Niger pensioners get benefits 21 years after retirement. Talk about serving your country and also getting the dividends of your service to the nation 21 years after. Page 6 has that story, and there you have it. We see some pictorials, of course, of some of those who unfortunately lost their lives during the protest, and of course pictures of both vehicles and buildings that were vandalized during the demonstrations that has continued across several parts of the country. Top of the page, Edu's return unlikely as Tinubu makes key changes in Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. Also, Ndume apologizes over Tinubu comment. APC considers reinstatement as chief whip. Let's see how this story is going to turn out. Page 10 has more details. And finally, on the Daily Trust, 70-year-old woman's son, 4 grandchildren die after eating amala in Kwara. Unfortunate situation there. Page 8 has that story. I do hope that an investigation will be launched into what really happened. But that's it for the Daily Trust.
We'll move on to the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper is leading with issues around the Russian flag. FG probes for northern political bigwigs. Influential political figure from Kaduna, Katsina, Bauchi suspected of sponsoring protests. FG deploys operatives in Niger, Chad borders. Protest arrowheads, disown Russia flag wavers. To other stories, 1 trillion spent to fight insecurity in 6 months, according to reports. And reps failed to effect 50% pay cut. So what was that whole noise about? Varsities mobilizing unqualified graduates for NYSC, according to JAM. And CBN OK's Unity Providence merger, SEC review is next. Naira crude sale yet to happen, operators. And 4 suspected cultists nabbed for killing Ogunbaba. Import duty waivers on rice, others begins next week. That's coming from the federal government.
And also we go to the Daily Independent. Top of the page says Customs CG assures of drastic food prices reduction. The question is when. Also, CBN okays Providus Unity Bank's merger to avert failure. Lead story on the Daily Independent reads, End bad governance protest. FG places diaspora sponsors on watch list, freezes their accounts. Use of foreign flags during protest. Coup calls capital offense. This is according to the police. Who authorized lethal force on protesters will be held to account, says former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And CSOs demand release of Lenin, others detained by security agents. These are some of the stories on the front page of the Daily Independent.
All right, we now have joining us via Zoom as well, Dr. Ben Sherman, former Director of News at The Voice of Nigeria. Good morning, Mr. Ben.
Morning, the team. Good morning. How was
Morning,
the
Mr.
weekend?
Ben. Welcome to the program. This time you've decided to join us from a distance. But then again, quite a
Well,
couple of stories.
maybe it's my own share of the protest.
Yeah. Okay, so you're observing a sit at home wherever it is that you are. But then again, the lead story on the Daily Trust talks about how four teenagers, including a bride to be, were killed in Kano, Zaria, all during the protest. Do you think that this protest, might have taken a dimension where one would now start calling on Nigerians to, exercise a bit of patience and also dial it down a little bit in order for normalcy to be restored across the different parts of the country that has witnessed violence in the last few days?
Yes, absolutely. I think that it is getting out of hand, that children, minors are now involved. If you check some of the actions being taking place here and there, you see teenagers involved. So it behoves on the leadership of the protest to call many people to order. Outside that, I can also see that a national library was raided, either in Kano or so. Surprisingly, computers, seats, tables, all were gone, but no single book was taken away. So that again tells you that people are not really ready to learn. And why it is taking this violent turn, especially in the north, is a different ballgame. You also look at how, the waving of flags here and there, either of Chinese or Russia, it's a thing that is of the north. So what really are they talking about? I think that the northern leadership too should start talking to the youths from the north. Why is it that it's taking this kind of dimension? And even though I saw that police denied the other time that I saw that some people were driving APC, and the police are saying no, it's not their vehicle. After all, it was a tactical maneuver by one of them. So let's assume it is so. But the killing, the destruction, wanton destruction, they are not part of this show. They're
All right.
saying peaceful protest.
All right, Mr. Ben. The military, through a report, is telling us that about 1 trillion naira was spent in the last month to fight insecurity, and one begins to wonder with some of the things we have seen on ground. For somebody like you who had covered that beat for the longest,
Decades, not.
what when we hear this kind of figure, what does it really imply with regards to military spending? Is it about the feeding of boots on the ground, or is it about the purchase of military hardware? Or what exactly should we think about when we hear of this kind of spending, and how that should reflect in terms of results on the ground?
Yes. Let's start as an example from the home. When you give your wife 50,000 to go to the market, what does she return with? What does she? Now you copy paste on the military. The inflation, the hypersonic inflation that we have in this country. You buy a thing today, tomorrow it's a different thing. Whatever you budgeted to buy a helicopter, to buy a ship, so some spare parts, even tires. Look at the petrol. Look at jet that they used in fighter jets, Super Tucano, and all that stuff. Then the feeding of these soldiers. What does it take? The figure could be so beautiful, so humongous. But when it comes to plotting all of that in an actual sense, you just see that the figure is big, the material is so little. And that's why one would not be surprised in terms of this kind of spending when it comes to the military. When you're talking of how much per liter of oil you need to buy, how much is an APC tank a kind of going to take? How much is an MRAP going to take, for example? And they also have some of these any bullet fired is dollars. We are not making them here. We have to import, and by the time you are importing, what's the exchange rate? So some of these things, you just look at them. Then when I was still in service, each time you see you make some applications, you need so money, and the DG just write approve. But is there financial backing? or backup. You see the budget so huge at the National Assembly. Is money really being released? You cry to the president, you cry to the NSA. Yes, as they said, approve, but is there financial backup? So approval is different from when money goes to the end user. And when it comes, it is late. Inflation has taken over. Sometimes you do some adverts and the law does not even allow you to buy some things on credit or buy in advance in expectation that money will be approved. It's wrong. It's bad. And that is why sometimes even the terrorists, they know when the military is out of stock when it comes to hardware to fight this war, and that's why they come in very strong. But the military, their culture is they will be seen but not heard. We are fortunate that Christopher Musa is the man who indeed will grant interviews uncensored. All the press ask any question left, right, and center on anything without being censored. So we are getting some of these things the way they are. So I think that Nigerians should also try to understand with these people. It is the same market for petrol. It is the same market to feed these soldiers. It is the same market to buy boots internationally, buy uniform, and look at our tailoring industry. We ought to be having some textile industries that will take care of a military uniform. We are not getting all of that. Everything has to be imported.
Mr.
Like Buhari will say, even toothpick has to be imported.
Yeah.
Why are we so?
Thank you. I would like to get your 2 cents around another story that made the front page of the Daily Trust, which is a Niger pensioner getting his benefit 21 years after retirement. You are already, or also rather, in that senior citizens bracket. What does it mean to wait for 21 years, almost half of what it would take to run through another period of service, to be getting your retirement benefit?
Yeah, you see, it's a systemic failure. When someone who has served, and probably if you check that man's life, he was so honest in the system to the extent that he left with the hope that, okay, this little money, I now use it to buy a car, I now use to build a house, and probably the man did not even finish training his children before he left service. But you could see that he's so been delayed, so to speak. And that is a kind of sending some chills down my spine, bearing in mind that I'm now into 2 years. I've not seen any dime from my own pension, and only for you to hear government is saying they'll borrow, whether I like it or not, to put into infrastructure. I'm in one village in Manchok there, and the next thing is where are this infrastructure? Is it the Calabar Lagos highway or aviation? They are not in my area, so we are waiting for this government, only for you to now give us some fears. For this man, he's lucky to be alive to even receive it. Many others died even before they were, they could see anything. That is if at all they saw anything.
Sure.
So this system pension management is so faulty to the extent that it's sending many people to their early graves, and this is not supposed to be so. A man or woman who has served to the end, and of course he has handed the battle of the rest to another person, should have his full benefit. But in Nigeria, it is not so. Nobody reckons with them. Try go to some of these pension administrators. You just see young people, old men, old women are queuing. They are there on their Facebook, they are there Instagram, doing some whatever stuff they are doing, and neglecting people who have served this country very well. I remember shouting very well at some people at FCMB. After all, they took me away from legacy to FCMB. I was not informed. Nobody sought for my permission. You just transferred me to wherever you wanted. And this is the crisis we have today. And many other people are having this kind of a crisis. I think that there has to be a police force. I mean, when I say an agency to look at who is holding on to pension and how to handle pension, how to punish those who are punishing pensioners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ben. How to punish those who are punishing pensioners. I think we can also categorize that as treason, as far as the Nigerian context is concerned. Once again, thank you very much for your insight. Thank you very much for finding time to join this program, even though it is not physically possible for you to be in the studios. We appreciate your rich narratives around the Nigerian problem anytime we call on you.
And we stand in solidarity with you as you stand in
the
solidarity with
ICT world
Nigerians,
has
of
made it
course.
so
As
that
you
we can
observe
just
the
have a
sit at
platform,
home
whether I'm in my village
protest
and you are in your
development.
city. And so we have a common ground.
Thank
Indeed.
you. All right, that's the much that time would allow us take today. This is the point where we draw the curtain on today's Daybreak on Trust Television. We hope we have brought value to your living room, and we thank you for giving us access, as I always say, free of charge. I'm Sunday Michael Ogu. Let's do this again tomorrow.
And I'm Sagir Ibrahim saying thank you so much for joining us. If you missed any part of the show, of course, you could connect with us across all of our social platforms on Facebook, X, and of course, Instagram. And catch our live stream on YouTube for more news programs and documentaries. My name is Sagir Ibrahim. Up next is 360 Sports. Do stay with us.